Hey folks, it's Mark from Apple Creek Outdoors, and we're here today to show you a little bit about turkey anatomy and how to butcher a turkey. The boys had a successful hunt this morning, opening day of the 2020 Missouri Firearms Turkey Season, Youth Season. And we've already got one done. I've practiced up on it, so now we'll take the time to go through this step by step. And I'll show you how we butcher a turkey anyway, and hopefully that'll help you. Now, a little bit on the external anatomy. We have, of course, the beard here, and then the wattles of the turkey. Now, a lot of you know this is where you need to be aiming for the wattles whenever you shoot a turkey. And here we have the spurs up top. And that's really about all there is for the external anatomy of the turkey. I mean, most of you know through common sense what the rest of the parts are. Now let's go ahead and start the butchering process. Now when I do this, we like to save our tail fans, especially from some of the first birds. So I just grab that fan, and you can feel the bone there at the base. Cut through there, parting those feathers. Gonna work from both sides, and gonna pull and cut at the same time. And I like to save some of those feathers up the back as well for the display. So I'll kind of cut a little bit along with that, and you can see now that that can be used for a very attractive beard and tail fan display. Hey Jed, can you grab this, or Wyatt, so the cats don't get it? Alright, and then the next step will be to remove the beard. Now some people will cut this off, some people will pull it off, but you want to make sure that you don't get too much extra skin. I just like to cut mine off to be safe. Just come in here. You can see where the hairs actually attach, and just right behind that is where I'll cut. So we can save that beard and tail fan for display then. Now the next step, actually getting into this bird, I find this skin right up here between the keel of the breast and the leg. And you can see right there, it sticks out a little bit. That's a great place to make that first cut. And I'll do that on each side, pulling down a little bit. There we go, and that reveals the breast meat. Now, once I have that done, we butcher the whole turkey because there's just so much meat on this whole bird. We don't just breast them out. The drumsticks, the thighs, the wings, that'll provide an extra 3 or 4 meals in casseroles and the like for our family of 6. So now to continue skinning this bird, you can see I can work a thumb right up the leg, get the knife in there underneath the skin next to my thumb, and work all the way up to that joint. And then at that point, I slowly work, or carefully work all the way around, cutting that skin, breaking that loose all the way up around that joint. Try not to leave any feathers, but those can always be removed later if necessary. Now once that's all loose, sometimes there'll be a little bit tougher connective tissue that you might have to cut through to be able to pull that skin down and around. There we go. So now that skin is pulled free from the leg. We'll do the same thing up the other leg. Get between the muscle and the skin. It's always very handy to have a sharp knife while you're butchering a turkey. Makes the work so much easier. Okay, that's about free now. Now if you see the meat starting to tear, you may go in and go ahead and touch that with the edge of your knife, and then just work that skin down around that leg. And then I like to come in the front here and work the skin backwards. And then pull it around the sides, past the anus, and then you'll need to go ahead and cut a little bit right there at the anus to relieve the pressure there. And then go ahead and pull that skin over the top. And you can see that that just pulls right down now. Now the next part is to work that skin around the wings. Now I found that a lot of times there's a little bit tougher connective tissue right here that has to be cut through. So as you're pulling that down, you may need to make a couple cuts to relieve that pressure so you can work that skin off. Takes a fair amount of force to pull that skin off, but we so much prefer skinning our wild turkeys as opposed to plucking them. Now I'd like to get my fingernails underneath this skin and pull that off the wing. Just like that. Tore a little bit of meat there, but not too much. Come in from the underside. And you do the same thing. And go ahead and get this other side here so we can show this. Let's pull this out of the way so that folks can see. So once I've got my wing mostly skinned out, these flight feathers will still remain attached. And with those flight feathers, so we can preserve all that meat there on the wing, just come in here and I hold my knife pretty much parallel to the direction or the plane of the feathers. Come right along here and cutting off the base of those feathers right there. Bend that last joint back, put your knife in the joint, work it around. If you have some pressure on it, it'll come off nicely. Alright, now we're going to move to the other side. Do the same thing. So here's one of those tough spots. Just touch the knife to that and it will release. Looks like the boy made a good shot on it, not a pellet in the breast. That's what we like to see. A little bit of bruising right there. I don't know if you folks can see that. A little bit of a discoloration. Now these birds don't have it too bad, but I've seen pretty good bruises and discoloration where they have evidence of them fighting, where they hit each other with their spurs. If you ever see that, unless it just looks, you know, like a really nasty pus pocket, you can cut those out. But usually it's nothing to be worried about. Alright, let me get a few more of these feathers from the back removed. Something's holding on there and I can't quite see it. There we go. So we've got most of that, the smaller feathers and skin removed. So now it's just a matter of coming in with that knife blade, and now on this side, just the way it works as far as me being right-handed, I come in from this direction. And you can see my knife is pretty much in line with those wing feathers. Cutting those right off, all the way down to that joint. And then we'll bend that back. Just set your knife right in that joint, rock it back and forth a little bit to find the tendons that you have to get through. Oop. There we go. I like to pull a few of those feathers off before they get too stuck on there. Now with what we have remaining, it's real simple. Just pull that skin down. The tissue right around the front part of the breast gets rather fatty. Just cut that back as close to the actual breast meat as possible. And then you'll get down to the point where it'll be time to remove the crop. Now to do that, I just still like taking light strokes along the edge of that breast meat towards the center. You can work a little bit deeper up here towards the front. Then you get to the point where you can get your hands up in there and remove the crop. There, I actually punctured a hole in it, but it's all right. That's why we have the bird hanging up. Get rid of that fatty tissue. Now, just to give you an idea here, a little bit on the anatomy of the bird. We have the crop, and that is the part of the bird that's going to temporarily store the food, because this bird, a turkey by nature, will go out and it'll eat a whole bunch and in a short amount of time, and then it'll go stay in a safer spot to digest that food. So it'll fill this stretchy pouch, and you can see this turkey had been eating some clover. So it'll fill that stretchy pouch up with food and then go to a safer place and digest that. Or in the case of late afternoon feedings, they'll fill up this pouch with food and then sit on that branch and digest that food all night long. Now down here too, one of the things that we can see easily out here is the trachea. Now the trachea is the windpipe. I'll break this loose so you guys can see. Pull that. Now this will be connected to the lungs, but you can see it has a more rigid nature, and that is the trachea or the air pipe or the windpipe. All right, and somewhere amongst this mess is also the esophagus. Or actually, no, that would be further up there. So that's all removed. I'm gonna finish getting the yuckies off here. Okay, and then I like to, for this part of it, I've got my Gerber game shears here. Or no, Fiskars game shears. These things seem to cut through just about anything. So I'll cut through that neck. No point in saving that for the meat. It was too riddled with shotgun pellets. And now we'll start getting into the internal anatomy of the bird. And as far as butchering this part of it, I like to go right in here at the keel of the breast. Cut very shallow, just enough to get through the muscle and the skin. We'll break that open, and I'll come up here, work towards the anus, or the cloaca actually would be the correct scientific term. And the cloaca, that's actually where both the urine and the feces is just discharged, and it's also where the semen is going to be secreted from as well. So once again, just carefully working around this, not to puncture any of the intestines. Now in a bird, a lot of times you'll notice there's white parts to the poop and there are green or black parts to the poop. The white part is the urea, comes from the kidneys. The darker parts are what comes through the intestines. That's actually the digested food particles. Now once again, be careful here, work around that cloaca. You don't want to get any fecal matter on the bird. All right, and we'll just give a brief overview of the internal anatomy here. Obviously, we have the intestines, and right here we have the gizzard, and we'll take these things out singly, or some of these things, but I like to pull this all the way to make sure that I'm not going to get any fecal matter on the bird. Now you notice right here, Wyatt, could you hold this? The gizzard. Now the gizzard, that's where the bird is actually grinding up its food. The gizzard really serves as the teeth for the bird. Now this tube right here, this is coming from the crop that I showed you earlier. So the bird stores the food in the crop, and then as it digests it, it will feed into the gizzard and then go through the intestinal system. And you can see if I pull this out, here we have what was attached to the crop, and then the gizzard, and then the intestines. Now let me have that knife back. Now I said the gizzard acts like teeth. And you might be wondering, how does it act like teeth? Well, if we cut into that gizzard, and most of you are probably aware of this, but for those of you who aren't, we cut into that gizzard, there we find it has been digesting, chewing up some of the green things that it had been eating. But if you notice, there's pieces of gravel and sand in here. So most birds, they will eat gravel and sand, small pieces of gravel and sand, and that stays in the gizzard until it grinds away as it's grinding the food away, because the gizzard is just a muscular organ. It's got a very tough liner. You can see right here the lining of the gizzard, incredibly tough. It has to be so those rocks don't grind it up. But then you can see how that's been working the food over. So there you go, the gizzard. Wyatt, could you go ahead and wash that for me, please? Don't have a lot left in here, but what we do have, all right, and we'll need to get a good close-up of this. Here we have the testes in the male bird. Now this is kind of odd. One's a lot larger than the other. But then we also have the tube that leads from the testes, and this would have gone down and joined the cloaca, and that's what would have been used, or that's where the semen is given off when the bird reproduces. And we'll go ahead and get those out of the way so you can see the next bit of anatomy. Now down below those testes are the nephridial organs, or our equivalent of the kidneys. And these are what are going to be filtering the blood. And those also have tubes that will lead to that cloaca. And to remove that, now you don't absolutely have to get these out of the bird, but it's not hard. You just stick your finger in there. There's kind of a cavity, and those nephridial organs will just pop right out. It's not critical to remove all of them, because some of those can be kind of tucked away up in that skeletal cavity up there. So once we've got those removed, not a lot left. We do have the lung tissue down here. Now birds, they do have air sacs, which allows a little bit more efficient gas exchange, and so it works in the air sacs work in conjunction with the lungs. The air passes through the lungs and then back out of the lungs. But here we have the lung tissue, just a bright pink, spongy type of material. And somewhere down here, there we have the heart. You can see it's still surrounded by the pericardial sac, and that pericardial is just a sac that surrounds the heart there. It's got a little cut in it. Let's see if we can slip it out of that. There you go. So there was the sac that the heart was surrounded in. And you'll want to cut the top of that off. The heart is just like any other muscle, very good to eat. Now the heart and the gizzard, we save those both. Some people really like the gizzard, some people don't. It's all a matter of personal preference. If anything, just save them and feed them to the dog once they're cooked up. And I'll do a better job of cleaning that up later, but here we can see the aortic arch, the aorta leaving the heart. All right, let's get that down there. I missed the liver. How did I miss the liver? It's down there.
Yeah, it was connected to the intestine.
All right. Well, I'm not going to save it, being that it's in the gut bucket, but I will show it to you. Yep. There was the liver, and this was connected to the intestines. Actually, it was laying clean on top, so I might save that. It all gets heated up. A little bit more lung tissue. All right, now to disassemble this bird, finish the butchering process. We like to completely take the wings and the legs, take it all off. It freezes much more compactly that way. And I'll start that just by taking this arm, pulling out, or wing, working into that joint carefully, and you'll find the joint right there. That was right in there like that. Ball and socket type of joint there. And you just have to go through and cut those tendons that are holding that wing on there. Don't get too much into the breast meat, or I try to avoid that anyway. And there we have one wing. Work into that joint right there. Got the other wing off. Now this is already broke. Make sure you have a good grip on that. So now here we have a nice breast ready to go, ready to fillet out and make some good turkey nuggets for supper. I think everybody's looking forward to that. And on these legs, what I do right here, just go in right where that leg bends, which is getting kind of stiff. Get your knife in there and just rock that knife back and forth just a little bit. And that leg comes right off that joint. Now I like to separate this also. So follow that muscle group up. And it just takes a little practice figuring out where those joints are. I even have trouble sometimes. But once you get into that joint, cut those tendons. There, we've got a nice turkey drumstick. Now a lot of folks will throw away the drumsticks and this part just because they think it's too tough. Folks, look up some recipes, pressure cook them. But we found that if they're cooked right, and it's not hard to cook them that way, you can actually just take the meat in one hand and the end of the bone in the other and just pull it apart. All those tough tendons and ligaments in there just separate right out. So there's no point at all in wasting that good meat. There we go. Through that joint. Now that's ready to go. One more to cut through. And we are done. All right, Wyatt. Head to the house. There you go, Jed. And that's how we butcher our turkeys here on the farm. Now, I hope you found that helpful, and I hope you have a successful hunt. And until next time, thank you for watching.